Let's Pod This is sponsored by Roast Scout. Roast Scout is the best way to discover amazing, delicious coffee from some of the nation's best independent roasters. The people at Roast Scout believe that great coffee is everywhere, but since you can't be everywhere, you might miss out. And so they've created a way to bring that great coffee to you. They work with small batch roasters from around the country to ship fresh roasted whole bean coffee direct to your door each month. Now, other subscription services typically send you just one brand of coffee month after month after month, and that's fine, but it's not great. I mean, what if there's something better out there? What if your coffee soulmate is there in some small mountain town, just waiting for you to find it? Roast Scout delivers a bag of fresh coffee to you from a different roaster every single month. Sign up today at roastscout.com/letsfixthis to get $25 off a subscription of 3 months or more. Hey everyone, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore, and I'm joined, as I am every week, by Scott Melson. Hello, sir.
What's up, man? How are you?
Scott, you really are at the news desk tonight.
Of a fashion, yes.
Which we will discuss later on in the show.
Indeed.
Let's go ahead and acknowledge the elephant in the upper room studio, and that's that this is our second take of this.
What?
I tweeted about this morning. Man, we recorded a great episode last night, and it totally got screwed over by my laptop.
Yeah,
it
was unfortunate.
I feel like it's ironic that Apple announced new laptops, and then my MacBook crapped out at the 48th minute of our recording, right?
Yes, it was like we were done. We were recording the outro, and it crashed. And then you went through like an incredible. I was impressed, an exhaustive process to find out how to like do the emergency.
We could
recovery.
manually, right. And if I was Dr. Dre and this was like a hit track, I might try to go through and pull those 736 individual 6-second segments and put them in order.
You know what? We should come up with we should build a website.
That's a hazing for an intern right there.
No, dude. We should build a website that just splices them all back together. Just puts them back together.
Well, you got to sort them by time and then rename them in numerical order and then put them in there. And there are some tools that would do that, but we didn't want to. We decided just to go ahead and re-record.
We were like, will it take more or less than an additional 48 minutes to put it all back together?
And so
we decided it would take more.
And I will go and say that I anticipate this episode might be slightly shorter.
Yes.
Give or take.
Yes.
3 minutes.
Yes.
All right.
Plus minus.
Plus or minus. This is called foreshadowing for what's going to happen.
Well, and it sucks too because the first thing we're going to talk about is you get right into it. Right, the first thing we have to talk about is this poll, right? Like, and the thing is yesterday the poll was like brand new and everybody was talking about it, and now like today it's a different news cycle, and now it's like, oh, Scott and Andy just saw the poll.
No, we saw it on
24 hours old.
Listen, I saw it at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night.
We texted about it.
We did. I saw Scott Mitchell.
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night? Yeah, today's Thursday. Tuesday night, Scott Mitchell posted about it. I went to the Sooner poll website and read about it. And then they kind of had a more formal announcement. Well, because they kind of released it. It was a News 9 funded poll. And so they released it during the 10 o'clock news on Tuesday night. And then they did another thing on Wednesday morning. So let's get to that, Scott.
Yeah, so we've got a new poll that's out that looks at several statewide races in Oklahoma. It does not poll any of the congressional district races. It looks at governor, lieutenant governor. Probably the biggest, I think the lead out of this is that as of Tuesday night, according to this poll, there is Kevin Stitt is in the lead in the governor's race.
Just barely.
By a smidge and a hair. He is at 46.4. With Edmondson coming in at 41.6 and Chris Powell, who is the Libertarian candidate, at 3.8% of the vote. Way back there. To me, the biggest takeaway from those top line numbers is if you were to add up 46.4, 41.6, and 3.8, you would ask yourself, hey, Scott, that didn't add up to 100. Why not? And you would be correct. And that's because there are 8.3% of voters who are, as of 2 days ago, undecided.
I don't know who I'm voting for yet.
A week before the election, it's coming down to the wire.
So, this election is about as close as it gets. This is dangling Chad close.
You're right.
For those of you who remember the 2000 election, right?
Yes.
And so I think, for one thing, so the Libertarian vote could detract from, well, likely the Republicans, right?
You would think that the Libertarian vote would tend to pull from the Republican
and
candidate.
so the Libertarian vote could be the difference between Stitt winning or losing.
Yes.
Furthermore, I think the independent electorate, right, of which I am a member, I'm a registered independent, depending on how that goes, it could very well sway it one way or the other. So there's roughly 11, 15% are independents.
Yeah. Something like that, yeah.
Either way, that's way more than the margin of error.
Yeah.
And that's enough to sway it if it went one way or the other, right?
Yes, totally.
Now, historically, independents, I think, tend to vote more liberal than conservative.
I think in Oklahoma, I think that's true.
Oh, that's true. It may not be that way in every state, but here, I think it's it. So, and Keith,
in fact, if you would like to know, I'm pulling it up right now. Today, the last figures were posted by the state election board, detailing what voter registration numbers are as of today, and these are the numbers that will be. These are the votes that are at play in the election. So I'm pulling it up on my old and slow laptop.
Tell us what the internet says, Scott Melson.
It's spinning.
Oh, that's what happened last night. Our thing crashed.
It's
well,
spinning.
and so I'll say that Keith Gaddy, the poli-sci guru at OU, had a pretty interesting tweet thread today.
Yes.
Where he broke down his impressions of this poll, and he said that the independents could be the way, and that if the independents, if they go for Drew Edmondson, they would give him like a 3-1 lead.
Yep.
Within that small slice, right?
Right.
And so I think this is what we all expect, is that Stitt will likely get the likely Republicans, like the Republican likely voters. Yep. Drew will get the likely voters on the Dems, and then it left in play are the independents, the libertarians, and those who are unlikely voters, right?
Yes.
So the ones that polls don't know. So when they call them, like, are you going to vote? Folks are like, I don't know.
Right.
The ones who may not vote in every election. And so it's tough to gauge.
Yeah. I will say, I think that, one thing that's interesting. So when you look at, this is by age, where it's by party. I'm looking at the crosstabs here on the poll, which is something some people will tell you should not do.
Nerd alert.
You know what? I can't help myself. I see a poll, I see crosstabs. It's, I have to.
Like a moth to a flame.
That's right. That's right.
Give me that geeky data.
Right. So right now, as of this poll, Kevin Stitt is getting 75.5% of Republicans. And 13.6% of Democrats. Drew Edmondson is getting 78.5% of Democrats and 11.1% of Republicans. So that's
pretty similar.
Those are more even than they were earlier in the race. Some polls had shown that Edmondson was outperforming Stitt in that measure a little bit in terms of cross-party voting, and that Stitt was underperforming a little bit in terms of Republicans. But it sounds like some of them have maybe come home a little bit. Again, as of this poll, Kevin Stitt is winning independents, or Kevin Stitt is losing the independent vote 32.2 to 43.4.
I will say, like, in this day and age, I'm surprised that there is any legitimate cross-party voting.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything feels so polarized. Like,
right.
Who are these Republicans that are voting Democrat, and who are these Dems that are voting Republican?
Right.
Like, what kind of games are they playing? And I'm not faulting anybody. I just think it's really funny, like unexpected, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
So, Scott, we're talking a lot about the governor's race, and that is because it is the one that is the closest.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, among other statewide races, lieutenant governor, AG, on down, those are all, from what I saw today, they all have like double-digit leads.
They do, but one thing that Dr. Gaddy pointed out, which was super interesting to me, because it is a point that had entirely escaped me, because I looked down at the races and saw, yes, almost all the other statewide races have either very high single-digit or double-digit leads. They may even all be double-digit leads. However, in the statewide races, there are only a couple people that are polling above 50%, right? So Joy Hoffmeister is polling 45.4. For state superintendent treasurer, Randy McDaniel is polling at 48.45. Whereas Mike Hunter for AG is polling at 53. Cindy Bird for the state auditor inspector is polling at 51.3. So there are a lot of these other statewide races where the leader has a double-digit lead, but they're polling at under 50%. And
they're all polling it.
And undecided voters, like in the state treasurer race, there's a 17-point lead from Randy McDaniel to Charles DeCoon, but there's 25%, 26% of people haven't made up their mind yet.
That's legitimately fascinating to me, and I think I didn't click with me either until I saw Gaddy's tweet about that to think that any of these folks would have less than half the vote means it's up for play in some accounts.
Yeah,
especially for like state treasurer, because that's Randy McDaniel, who's been a state rep from like Nichols Hills area,
right?
And Charles DeCoon is an independent,
right?
Not even a Dem,
right? It means that a lot of those people have not made up their minds.
I've seen a ton of his signs around here in the metro, which hats off to him as an independent. That's tough to do it. I'm sorry, breaking news right now. I don't have I don't have like a. It's the same thing. Breaking news right now. My wife has texted me that she just found one of our puppy's teeth in the mouth of our other dog. And sent me a photo. So
that's not great.
We noticed this morning that he's around 5 months old, the puppy, and we noticed that several of his back teeth were missing, and he just is chewing on everything. He's eating toilet paper off the roll like it's an apple, which is really difficult when you need toilet paper later just to have like half of a roll.
Yes.
But yeah, she said she picked it up. The other dog picked it up and was chewing on it. And then she sent the rather vomitous emoji.
Gross.
All right, well, yeah. Speaking of disgusting, back to politics.
But
thanks for indulging me in that brief update about my fur children. All right, so let's talk about the governor's race. And let's talk about it from a data statistical perspective, Scott. By chance, would you have anything to do with this? And perhaps, do we have a name for this segment?
I think we do. But we got to intro it, right? So
Right. So I'm Andy Moore.
And I'm Scott Melson. And this is Model Thoughts.
Model Thoughts. That's right, not Model Talk.
Oh, no,
I forgot what it was.
We have to redo that.
Okay, all right, let's try this again. Hi, I'm Andy Moore.
And I'm Scott Melson. And this
is Model Thoughts.
That was awesome.
I forgot how lackluster that
was.
What a
somewhat anticlimactic.
Mediocre trumpeting, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been, you and I have been talking a lot about what we think is going to happen in the governor's race, and folks have asked us, there are folks that have asked me what I think is going to happen. Some folks ask me because the election is on Tuesday and it's what everybody's talking about. Some folks have asked me because they know that I'm interested in politics. Some folks have asked me because we meet them out when we're out doing an event or when we're doing education or advocacy, and they ask us, hey, you guys do the podcast. What do you think?
What do you think is going to happen in this election?
Right? And so they haven't sounded like that for the most part, but
just my friends.
But as we were kind of thinking, how do we answer this question? To me, there's really, especially in a race, it'd be one thing if this was a race that was presumed to be decided by 25 or 30 points. But in a race that's close, there's a few ways you can go about it. You can, one, essentially just guess, right? Lick your finger, stick it up in the air, see which way the wind is blowing, and say, I think Stitt's going to win, right?
The North is going to win this.
Yeah. Or you can be slightly more kind of, you can make a more educated guess. So you can try and talk to friends. You can read polls. You can, man, I talked to this guy and he's been in politics for a long time, and he says it's going to be Stitt. But I talked to this other guy, and man, he follows this stuff real close, and he says the Dems are excited.
It's
and he thinks it's going to be
biased, right?
Yeah, and so and those are all very, like, those are legitimate data to consider. They're qualitative, right? You can't measure those things, but or at least it's difficult to measure those things. But that's a more, it's still a guess, but it's kind of a more educated guess, if you will. The third thing that you can do is try to come up with some kind of quantitative, analytical, systematic way to look at measurable data, right, and see if it tells you anything about what's going to happen. And so
and specifically looking at, like, what does history tell us?
Yeah.
Because history has a way of repeating itself.
It does. And so that's what we did. We here at the pod have come up with a forecast. We've been debating what to call this. Do we call it a model? Do we call it a forecast? And I would say I landed on forecast because this is not technically a model. This is not a, like, simulation of the vote taking place. This is really taking this is looking at several historical trends, measuring them to see which ones have been influential in past elections in a statistically significant way, and then assuming that correlation will hold for the upcoming election. So it's less of a model and more of a forecast. If that's a distinction that I think is subtle, but it's important.
Well, semantics are important. I think we could call it the Moore-Melson model.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I like it. M&M. It's the M&M forecast.
It's the 3M forecast, which my dad was a 25-year 3M alumni.
The 3M forecast. TM.
That's right. What do you? Quick fun fact: do you know what the actual 3Ms are in the name 3M for the 3M Corporation?
Weren't they like German, like Messerschmitt or something?
Nope, not remotely. Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing.
Really?
Their headquarters in Minnesota, and they got their beginning in Minnesota, or in mining and manufacturing.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, most people know them because of Scotch tape and Post-it notes.
Do you know where I first learned about the 3M Corporation? This is going to crack you up.
Is that something medical? Because they're medical suppliers.
They make Littmann stethoscopes.
Do they really?
So Littmann stethoscope, which Littmann
that's the gold standard, right?
They are widely regarded as like that's the stethoscope you carry.
This is how you can hear people's hearts the best.
Yes, and Littmann at some point I think in the 90s was purchased by 3M, and so now
they had a big medical acquisition period there. That's when my dad, towards the end of his tenure there, he was part of the medical imaging. 3M also manufactures overhead projectors that most of us of our generation had in schools, right?
Dude.
Like the whole, like with transparencies.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like little like.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had a math teacher. She never used the chalkboard.
No, just
she had like folders that were. So she had her lectures like on transparency sheets, like in folders, and she would just
one after another.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw a teacher with like the transparency on the roll.
That was in college for me.
You could write and then scroll it over, and it would like move over. That was fascinating. Algebra was never the same.
Right. Speaking of algebra, so we came up with this forecast, and we're gonna kind of start and walk through this and just tell you a little bit about what it is and what it does. So
yeah. I was gonna say, tell me why do a forecast. We kind of covered that, but so tell me what's in the forecast.
Yeah. So the first thing, this is a forecast that this projects vote share. Okay. So this is saying we think that candidate X, Drew Edmondson or Kevin Stitt is going to win this percentage of the vote in a given county. All right. So it does not predict like we think that Drew Edmondson or Kevin Stitt has this percentage of a chance of winning. We don't think that it's not a probabilistic forecast. This is saying we think that this is the way the vote shares will break down on a county by county level. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this is a forecast that looks only at historical trends, and specifically we looked at voting behavior. We looked at trends in registration data. We looked at kind of the rates of change of some of these factors and analyzed them in several different ways, looking for statistically significant correlations to a sample data set. And at the end, used the ones that had the highest correlation and the lowest level of error. So that's what's in the model. It's essentially a collection of different voting behaviors and changes in the makeup of the electorate that we say influence election outcomes in reproducible, measurable ways. What is not in the forecast is also an important question. And one thing that's not in the forecast is polling data. And I think that's a very legitimate criticism of this forecast,
because that's different than most other forecasts.
Yeah,
things.
Most forecasts include polling data. Ours does not include polling data, and it's for several reasons. But the biggest one is just it was not practical to do that at this point. We kind of got this wild hair about a month ago to come up with a forecast, and at that point, it was really too late for us to work out how best to use polling data in a way that makes sense. One of my goals for the future is to adjust the forecast by using polling data. However, I would also say that part of this forecast, one of the strengths of it, is that it doesn't include polling data. A poll is essentially you're asking someone how they are going to vote, and then you are counting on them to follow through with that and actually show up on election day and vote the way that they said that they would. You account for uncertainty. You account for all kinds of error. One of the errors being that people don't do the thing that they say they're going to do. But this at the end of the day, with a poll, you're counting on someone. You're kind of making a bet that voters are going to behave in the way that they say they will. With this forecast, we're not counting on voters behaving the way that they say they will. We are looking at the way they have in fact behaved in the past and assuming that those behaviors are going to be correlated in this election the same way they've been correlated in the last elections. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think that's a really kind of a really no nonsense way to look at it, right? Like, we're trying to say this is what's happened historically, and things could be different this year, but as we all know, history is a powerful force. And so, like, even though there may be variations among certain cities or counties,
Right.
on the whole, it doesn't
Right.
vary that much.
One of the other things that's hard about using polls in a state like Oklahoma. So one, we only have seven polls, I think, for this race, which is not zero, but it's not like, a presidential election where there will be hundreds and hundreds of hundreds.
It's not North Dakota.
Yeah. Right. That's for all you nerds out there. That's a very nerdy politics joke, because this North Dakota Senate race has like 3 polls in it, and North Dakota is notoriously difficult to poll because they don't have parties, and there's some funny ways that they do voter registration.
They don't have parties?
Maybe it's that they don't have. It's something weird up there. Anyway, if you're from North Dakota, tweet us and tell us about it. But polls, only look at a very, very small slice of the electorate, like the Sooner Poll forecast or the Sooner Poll poll that was released this week. Looked at 447 likely voters, which is a good size sample, but it's significantly less than the 2.1 million registered voters in Oklahoma. One of the things that we did is we looked at voting behavior on a county by county level. So, for instance, it's entirely possible that in the poll that was conducted by Sooner Poll, there's no one from Beckham County in that poll, right? But Beckham County is accounted for in our forecast because we looked at their voting behavior and it's part of the forecast. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
So I feel like this is a good way to look at the entire state. And, I think it's important to mention too, we are looking at voting behavior, but we're looking also at rates of change in voting behavior. So it's not as simple as, oh, this county voted this way in 2006, so there's a chance they're going to vote this way in 2010. That's part of it, but it's also looking at how the electorate is changing and the way voting behavior changed over that time period as well. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what's in the model, and then what's not in the model. I keep calling it a model even though it's a forecast. I said I wasn't going to do that. Damn it. It's a forecast. That's what's in the forecast and not in the forecast. Other things that are not in the forecast, and this is really, really important. We did not start with an outcome that we wanted to see and work backward to try.
Right. We're not trying to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Here.
We didn't stop and say, hey, we want Kevin Stitt to win, so we're going to build a model that says Kevin Stitt wins. Mm-hmm. We started from the data and built it forward. And I've run 2 major iterations of this outside of the sample data, trying to make a projection, and been surprised both times.
Well, it's gone both ways.
Right.
When we updated the data today,
yeah,
and it ran the other way. So we previously had Stitt leading,
yeah,
and now we have Drew leading.
Well, thanks for just breaking the news there.
Do you want to say? I got ahead of myself
So,
here.
as of today, our forecast, we would forecast that the next governor of Oklahoma will be Drew Edmondson. The race is so freaking close. It's a hair's breadth, a cat's whisker, if you will.
Because we recorded this last night, and it was Kevin Stitt.
Yes. And that's because there was some new information that we were able to put in today. Some information.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And the reason we ran it last night without that was because I was not sure we were going to be able to get that data in time for the election.
Hats off to the election board, though.
But we did get it. And the reason that it's different is because the version of the forecast that we had last night doesn't have as many variables as the version that we ran today. But the version that we ran today is actually has a lower standard error across.
It's more accurate.
Yeah, it's more accurate, and it also more accurately predicts outcomes in the test data. Does
Interesting.
that make sense?
Because you've like run it on previous years to see if the result from this model matched the result of reality.
Right. And so this is a really important point I think to make, because one of the questions is, all right, so you're saying Edmondson's in the lead, or Edmondson's going to win, or he's the favorite, however you want to say it.
We're not saying that. We're saying
that's true. We're saying Edmondson is going to win. We're saying on election day this is what's going to happen.
We're saying there's a chance, but there's an equal chance that he might lose.
Well, now you're
not
confusing
equal.
people.
Well,
yes,
we're just saying because it's not a probabilistic matter.
Right. So should we just start this whole part over?
Well, just say it.
So we are saying that Drew Edmondson is going to win. Our forecast says he's going to win.
Our prediction.
51 point. Now I got to pull it back up because I don't remember the number. 51.48 to 48.52. However, the error there is plus or minus 3.24%. So what that means is it is just as likely that Drew Edmondson could win 54.72 to 45.28.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also just as likely that Kevin Stitt could win 51.76 to 48.24.
I will say that my personal bias is that I don't like decimal points in this situation.
All right, so then you can. So if you're gonna be like Andy and you're gonna round up, Edmondson, the forecast projects that Edmondson would win 51 to 49. If you add plus or minus 3 points to that, then you get Edmondson 54 to 45 on the high end, and then you get Stitt 52 to 48 on the low end.
It's so close. It's honestly fascinating. And I said this last night when we recorded, is that I had joked to you over text this week that I kind of wish it was a more clear-cut thing so that we didn't have the chance of being wrong, like the wrong person. It's like the difference between saying, well, it's like a 80 or a 90% chance of rain today. Like it's probably going to rain either way. But we're saying like it might rain or it might not. Right. And that matters to people. Right. And so.
And, one thing that's the point, we've talked about like how accurate this is, and people, I assume, are going to ask like, well, how accurate do you think your forecast is? Well, that depends on what you mean by measuring accuracy, right? So if your measure of accuracy is in the test data, how often does the model correctly predict the winner of the governor's race? The answer is 100% of the time. However, a huge caveat to that is that all of the test sets were in elections that were lopsided, to say the least. So yeah, it predicted the overall outcome correctly, but the outcome was so skewed. Right. You'd have to have a really, really terrible forecast to get it wrong.
Right. So I think, in this year, it is legitimately close, right?
Right.
And it really, every person I ask, including the folks that are like in the know, you get...
It's tied.
It's tied. I bet half the folks I've asked have been like, oh, he's going to win. And the other half are like, no, the other guy's going to win. And then there's a contingent that's like, man, I don't know. Right. I'm so nervous.
Kind of the next way that you could look at how accurate is the forecast is, all right, we're looking at vote share on a county by county basis. All right. So how accurate is it in predicting the winner of the race in a particular county?
Right.
And the answer is 94%. So in the in the sample
data, if we wanted to know who wins LaFleur County,
in the sample data, we correctly predicted the outcome of that county 94% of the time. However, I would submit to you that particularly in a race that is this close, that is not the way that you want to assess accuracy, because this is a winner-take-all situation, right? It's not. This is not a winner-take-all situation. If you win Adair County, there's not like an electoral college,
right? There's no electoral college.
So if you win Adair County 52 to 48,
right,
you get 52% of the votes, but your opponent still gets 48%.
Right.
So you both get votes from that county.
Right. And in some of these counties that are small,
right,
you might. That's the difference between like 6,200 votes and like
16,000 votes.
Right. Well,
or 60,000 votes.
Yeah, but it's really close. I'm saying, because some of our counties have a voting population that's less than 10,000.
Oh, and lots of them.
And so just a few votes skew the percentage a lot. And so that can kind of throw off some of that, but not throw off the election itself.
To me, the best way to assess how accurate this is to look at what's called the standard error of the sample, the standard error of the residual. That's what we would use. And what that's saying is, all right, when you're looking at a given county, what percentage of the time does the forecast accurately predict the vote totals, or the vote share rather, in that county within the standard error? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the answer is 73%.
Interesting. That's still pretty decent.
So we would say that our projections, county by county, are within the margin of error 73% of the time, which is not 95, but it's not 50-50 either.
Right.
So anyway, what do you have other questions about the forecast that I can answer for you?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it fairly extensively, especially for the purposes of this episode.
Yes.
Because what will happen is that we'll continue to look at this, and then on election night at our election night show, we'll kind of cast out into the world some kind of prediction from this, and then we'll see what happens. And then next week, in next week's episode, we will have a follow-up and discuss
how accurate it was or was not.
Right. And if it was not, even if it was, like, invariably there will be areas that we missed, right? And so we'll be able to know, like, which counties, and maybe account for why. Like, because, again, there's no way to accurately predict who is going to turn out and how they're going to vote necessarily. You can have a guess, but in reality, it might not be 100% accurate.
This is a great question, or a great issue, and I forgot to bring this up. I assume that this is going to come up from someone. How does the forecast account for turnout? And the answer is, in the most simple explanation, it doesn't. This is a forecast that is independent of turnout. Now, some of the variables that are included account for turnout indirectly, but they assume that turnout is going to look and feel and be about the same as it is in the typical governor's election in Oklahoma. But even if it's not, if you were to say turnout across the board is 60% or turnout across the board is 40%, rather than looking at the typical turnout by county, which is how we came up with the vote share, with the actual number of votes that we project, the outcome doesn't change. The proportions of votes awarded to each candidate don't change. The only thing that changes is the vote total. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, where that could be a source of error, or where that is a source of error, is if a particular group, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, Independents, or a particular county, turns out in ways that are not consistent with their historical behavior, that kind of throws a wrench into the whole thing.
That's fair.
So that's one thing. The other place that's a source of error here is, for the sake of simplicity, we allocated vote share to Democrat and Republican candidates only, because it gets significantly more complicated.
Yeah. Additional variables.
When you're looking at 100% as the goal and just dividing that proportionally among two people, just mathematically is a lot simpler than doing it among three.
Interesting. Great. Hey, hats off to you, Scott, for doing your work with this. I know we've talked about this a lot, but I will fully admit that you have been the pack mule that's carried most of this. So,
well, I get into it, and then I'm like, oh, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. But now
but despite all of my statistics training, I have not retained as much as you have, apparently. So well done. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss how to form a voting plan, which is very important.
That is vital.
Right back. All right, we're back, and now we're going to talk about a voting plan. We're going to do this in place of our question of the week. The question of the week is, what is your voting plan? Scott, do you have a voting plan?
I do, Andrew.
What is your voting plan?
To vote.
Well, that's great, but let's get a little more detail on that plan.
So, for a number of reasons. One, because I think that voting, Election Day, should be a national holiday. Two, because I love Election Day. Three, because we have something going on Election Day night.
The Election Night Show.
I actually took off work on Election Day.
Me
so
too.
I will be voting in the middle of the day at an as yet undetermined time.
Okay.
But probably in the morning.
Okay. So let's talk about the ins and outs of forming a voting plan. And I will admit this is a term that I had not heard before this election, but I love it because I like plans, and I think honestly, like voting is more complicated for people's lives, right? So, like as an example, I have a staff person in my program who lives in Chickasha but works in Oklahoma City. And so for her to plan, and she's a single mom, and so to plan when she's going to vote and to make sure she has enough time to get there and then get to work or get home and dinner and all of that. It's not just, she can't just pop over there during her lunch break, right? It's like it's a 45-minute drive one way. So making a plan makes a difference. So we'll help you break it down. And my plan is that by the time this posts sometime on Friday the 2nd, look at the blog post on our website, letsfixthisok.org/blog. I will have a voting plan document in there. I will also put it out on Twitter and Facebook so you can find it. And I know it seems silly, but I think sometimes worksheets are helpful, right?
You know who has a voting plan?
Who?
Mama Melson. Actually, as we sit here recording, my mom is texting me. She is at home, having finished watching the Thunder game, and she has her sample ballot.
Mm-hmm.
She's going through her sample ballot in preparation
Good for her.
Going to early vote tomorrow.
Excellent.
Yes. As you may or may not know, dear listeners, you can take your sample ballot with you.
That's right. It's an open book test.
Right. So you can take that business with you. You can fill out all the answers beforehand and then just copy.
Yeah, that's right. Just copy straight over. Here's what I put on my sample. Here's what I'm putting on my actual ballot. So,
completely unrelated piece of information, but I just got the answer. The proportion of registered independents that make up the Oklahoma electorate for this election is 15.5%.
That is substantial.
15.5%.
Not insignificant, right? So if the margin of error is 5 or less, this is 3 times that. Right?
Yeah.
Could skew it because the polls don't poll independents typically.
The Sooner poll did here.
Oh, that's
recently.
right. This one it did,
This
but
one
normally
did,
they don't.
But it polled them at a rate of 7% of the electorate, so half of what it actually is.
Oh, fascinating.
So, anyway, there you go.
All right. Terrific. So, let's talk about what a voting plan is. Let's start with it's a who, what, when, where, why kind of situation. Specifically, let's start with when. When are you going to vote? Are you going to vote absentee? Are you going to vote early? Or are you going to vote the day of? If you're voting absentee, you have just a couple of days left to mail your ballot in, get it notarized and stamped and in the mail. If you're going to vote early, you can vote early Thursday the 1st through, and then Friday the 2nd, and then Saturday the 3rd. Those 3 days you can vote early at every county election board. So I assume this podcast will post on the 2nd. So if you listen to it before then, well, if you listen to it before the 3rd, you still have time. I might go vote on Saturday. I might vote early again this time because I'm anxious and I'd like to just get it out of the way. So, and also because we may have someone to take to the polls, and I want to be free for that.
We do have someone to take to the
Excellent.
polls.
I found someone else, but they're in Norman. So if you want to drive to Norman on Monday, we can do that.
Well, we could do that.
So when to vote. So first of all, select when you're going to vote. Absentee, early, or on the day of. Okay, so pick that first, and then you're going to pick where you're going to vote. So if you're voting absentee, it's on paper. You do it from home, wherever your paper is. You mail it in. If you're voting early, you vote at your county election board. And if you're voting the day of, you vote at your assigned polling place, right, in your precinct, which is somewhere near your house, probably not very far. Although I'm fascinated to go to like a rural area where folks, like someone's polling place might be several, 10, 20 miles away, right?
Totally.
My grandmother lives in assisted living. Her polling place is in her building. I was like, oh, you just go downstairs, and she lives on the first floor, so she goes down the hall.
How great would that be?
Well, no wonder they turn out at such high rates,
Like
right?
if I could just go into my kitchen, get my morning coffee,
it's
and
like
vote.
on the way to the lunchroom, and I was like, okay, Grandma, good for you.
Why? This is
What if it was in the dorms?
Well, what
can you imagine?
Why can't you do it? Like, why can't you vote on your phone?
Well, because the Russians could hack your phone, Scott.
The FBI can't hack my phone.
Yeah, but it's. I don't know. I'm just saying we can't even register online yet.
The FBI can't break into my iPhone, and I have to use a fingerprint to get into my iPhone. That sounds like, one, great security, and two, great verification of my identity.
So that's two different things. Getting into your phone's hard drive is one step. That's difficult. Hacking the connection between your phone and the election board is a much easier step.
I know.
Also, there are a few states, like 7 states, that don't have paper ballots for validation, and even though they've been advised against that this year, because the Russians hacked the last election.
Yes.
Golly, this is a big deal. Okay, so you've picked you've picked where you're going to vote, what to bring with you. Bring your ID. A photo ID would be great if you have one, or you can bring your voter identification card. I personally like to use my voter ID card on principle, because some folks don't have photo IDs, but this is adequate, and I like to throw the poll workers for a loop.
I like to not take my ID and make them let me cast a provisional ballot.
You go right ahead, man.
I don't really do that.
So we're going to have a guest in a future week, maybe next week. One of my friends, Michelle Bowie, here in town, she works at Elemental Coffee, and she attended the poll worker training. She's going to be a poll worker.
Fascinating.
She's in her 20s, and so I'm like, that's really exciting. She was not aware until the training that she has to be there from 6:30 a.m. until 7 p.m. She's like, no, all three of us have to walk in together. We have to walk out together, and we cannot leave during the day. She's like, what am I going to have for lunch? I said, we bring a sandwich. She's like, what if it has to stay cold? I was like, put an ice pack. Like, listen, we all got through elementary school here, okay?
Or Postmates.
Right, that's right, yeah.
Right.
But I'm really excited to hear her perspective of what it's like to work at a poll for the first time, right? She will say, she told me this morning, she's very anxious because she's the judge or whatever, so she's the one that has to determine if someone gets a provisional ballot or a regular ballot, and it's a big deal, and she feels a lot of pressure that she's supposed to be the only one there to make that decision.
Is there not like criteria to use?
But there's still some subjective stuff there, right? Like, and so I'm anxious to hear all of her story. So that'll be in a future episode. Anyway, so what to bring with you? Bring your ID or your voter ID card. As Scott mentioned, you can also bring a cheat sheet. You can bring your sample ballot. You can bring a note card, whatever you want to do. If you want to scratch it, you want to carve it into stone and bring in a stone tablet. That's weird, but good for you.
But legal.
It is legal. Also, perhaps sustainable. I don't know.
I said that I'm going to vote on Tuesday. I might vote tomorrow. I don't know.
Scott's plan is not written in stone.
I don't write things in stone.
That's right. Who does, really? I've got 2 Dremel tools. I don't write in stone. But God, I love
two Dremels.
Man, I have a cordless one and then one that plugs in. I got a whole bunch of.
You don't use either of them.
I have a whole bunch of Dremel tools. It's I got the whole like drill press. It's a Dremel tool is just, it's worth its money in gold.
Especially when you never use it.
I used to use it a lot for car stereo installations in my younger days.
Just giving you shit because it's fun.
It is fun. I appreciate it. So, what to expect when you get there? If you happen to be listening to this podcast and you have never voted in Oklahoma before, here's what to expect. You will walk in. You may have a line to wait in. You cannot wear or bring anything that supports a particular candidate. That's called electioneering. So you can't wear your Vote Stitch shirt, or Vote Drew shirt, or anything else. You can wear your Let's Fix This shirt because we just want you to fix it.
To all the Chris Powell supporters out there, this applies to everybody, not just you guys.
Right. You can't wear your Chris Powell shirt either. If you would like a Let's Fix This I Voted shirt, please go to letsfixthisok.org and you can purchase one there.
They're pretty awesome. I get compliments on it all the time.
Or you can wear it. You can buy one at the Election Night Show next Tuesday at the Tower Theater. Today, I will say that Citizens Bank of Edmond did a cash mob thing at Elemental, and all of their staff wore those T-shirts. It was really cool to see all these folks wearing T-shirts, and it has a I voted sticker screen printed onto the chest, so it looks like you voted every day of the year.
That's right.
There was like several people, and I was like, man, people all voted early. Then I realized, oh, wait, you're wearing our shirts. That's awesome.
You know how they say it's 5 o'clock somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
Every day is election day.
Ooh, I like that.
Somewhere. Somebody's voting on something.
That's right. All right, so so you can do that. You will not get a partisan ballot in. This is a general election, so everybody gets the same ballot, right? You don't get asked what party you are. You just get a ballot. If you want to declare your party affiliation out loud to the crowd, just don't. That's kind of weird. Don't do that. Just keep it to yourself and take your ballot and vote. When you get your ballot, walk to the ballot box, color in the square next to the people you want to vote for.
No check marks, no X's.
Right. And this instructions are on the ballot. This is like a Scantron, not like a cheesy survey.
But it's not a tiny bubble. It's a surprisingly large square.
It is a big square. It's roughly 3/4 of an inch. No, 3/8 of an inch.
I was like,
I would say it's like a 1/4 inch tall by 3/8 an inch wide.
Says the man with the Dremel.
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm not going to go down that line of questioning. Ends in inappropriate jokes. I'll have to cut out later. So anyway, color in the bubble. Look at the instructions. Color it in. Don't check it. Don't check the box. Actually, shade that box in. Don't vote straight party. This is my own instructions. Don't vote straight party because you're better than that.
The box should be gone. It should be gotten rid of.
Vote for the people. Vote for each and every one that you want to vote for. If you're not sure to vote for and you feel weird about it, you can skip it. It will not invalidate your ballot. You can still skip it.
This is not the ACTs. You're not penalized for leaving a question blank.
That's right. I think that's the SATs.
Is it?
I think the SAT is a power test.
Yeah. It's been 15 years.
Yeah, it's been longer.
It's actually been like 18 years. Oh,
next
God,
year will next year will be my 20th high school reunion.
Don't say that.
I need a fancier job or something.
Keep that to yourself.
Should I get Botox?
I know a guy.
I don't want to get Botox. That sounds terrifying. Botulism in my face.
They'll take great care of you.
I'm sure. All right, so color that in. You don't have to vote for all the races. And then when you're done, take your ballot, walk over to the little machine and slide it on in there. It's really simple. It'll count your ballot. It'll tell you what number voter you are for that day. So you might be number 27. You might be number 2,865. That would be rad. If you want to go ahead and tweet that, that'd be cool. That would tag us. Tag Let's Fix This OK. And use hashtag vote together, which would be really awesome as well. All right, so that's your voting plan. Scott, real quick, we're almost out of time here. I'm going to run through the ballot. If you don't know this already, go back and listen to our episode from 2 weeks ago, maybe, where we did our ballot guide, our voter guide. You can also find our voter guide on our website on the resources page, letsfixthisok.org/resources. Then click on 2018 voter guide. So there's a bunch of state, first governor, lieutenant governor, and then other statewide races. So there's like the attorney general, there's the state auditor, inspector general. There are the state treasurer, what else? Insurance commissioner, labor commissioner, corporation commissioner, superintendent. All these things are on there. If you want a summary of what each position does, it is in our voter guide. They're all, honestly, kind of important. And to quote the 538 Politics folks in one of their podcasts this week, state elections really matter. There are way more than Congress, arguably, right? So there are 435 members of the House of Representatives in Congress, but nationwide there are 6,000 state legislative races and governors up for election this year. 6,000. And I tell you what, 6,000 people that are the ones that are crafting and passing the laws that affect you day to day is a huge, hairy, honking deal.
Yes.
Scott's texting and happens to chime in occasionally.
Hey, now.
I do it too. Hey, no fault. So the 5 state questions are on the ballot. Let's go through those real quick. 793, that's allowing optometrists in retail establishments, namely Walmart. That's who funded it. There's that one. 794 is Marsy's Law, or AKA the Victims' Bill of Rights, which is a bit of a misnomer, for being honest. 798 would put the governor and the lieutenant governor on the same ticket. I'll be honest, It doesn't matter. Most people think we don't need a lieutenant governor. This is kind of just comes out in the wash. State question 800 is the Vision Fund, aka another rainy day fund. This would put some extra money aside from oil and gas revenue to help stabilize our state budget. This was proposed initially by David Holt, former state senator, now mayor of Oklahoma City. I think that has been the nugget that has generated the most interest of folks. Of like, oh well, okay. A lot of folks like Mayor Holt. They like him as senator. So
true story.
And then finally, state question 801 would allow schools to spend their building funds on other things like salaries. That's great if you're rich. It's terrible if you're poor, and there's that. I really encourage you to read our voter guide, to read the one from if you go to OK Election Guide, is it OK Voter Guide? The League of Women Voters has one that's really great. I'll tell you real quick what it is. It is okvoterguide.com. They have a really great voter guide. Oklahoma Policy Institute has a great voter guide. The Curbside Chronicle here in Oklahoma City has a great voter guide. Look them all up online. Or if you just go to our voter guide on our website, we have links at the very bottom of the 4th page for that. Check it out. All right. Does that cover that well enough for you, Scott?
I think so. Can you think of anything else to say about the forecast that I didn't think of?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
So let's quick cut to a couple of announcements. I love that kind of weak trombone there. It's trying, man. So 2 announcements.
I love your weak trombone.
That's inappropriate. I don't even know what you mean by that. One time in 4th grade, I was doing a mouth trumpet, which also sounds inappropriate, but we were in the computer lab.
I'm so tired.
And we would have our headphones on, and I was over there like just rocking out. I'm a little solo. I didn't know that the rest of the class had not put on their headphones, and so I could hear myself. I thought they all were being quiet, and then the kid next to me taps me in the shoulder, and the whole class is looking at me, and I had been like,
hey bro.
I mean, like Winston Marsalis, like just rocking out over there, and I was very embarrassed.
Dude, Wynton Marsalis, super nice guy.
Did you meet him?
I did get to meet him. I got to meet him and sit on a rehearsal with the Lincoln Center Jazz Band, and it was freaking awesome.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah,
nice.
When I was playing the saxophone.
Oh yeah. We should have had you as be the house band for our election night show.
It's been a minute.
All right,
it's been a minute.
Speaking of that, as a reminder, next Tuesday is the election night show at the Tower Theater, 6:00 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's going to be terrific. We've had a few changes. Avenue is going to be our house band. They're a local band. They're really outstanding. They're going to be there. Our previous house band had to cancel. They had some conflicts that came up. So also live music from Casey Clifford, Stephen Salawan, and Joel T. Mosman. Also in-person guests, interview guests. Jason Dunnington, House Rep Jason Dunnington, Senator A.J. Griffin, Catherine Sweeney for the Journal Record, Ben Odom, Felix Linden, Khaki Porch, J.B. Williams. JB's going to perform as well. It's going to be great. This is like the Tonight Show, but 4 times as long, 4 times as awesome. All Oklahoma guests and musicians. Free food, free admission. I know the website asks for tickets. They're free tickets. That's just so we can make sure we order enough food. So come on out. Drink specials. You can buy koozies. Scott and I will be on stage. Oh my gosh, this is an election show for everyone.
It's really gonna be pretty awesome.
Oklahoma has never seen anything like this.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty awesome. I mean, like, I'm excited to like be in like a place with friends. I mean, I usually like am at my house on election night, like panicking and like staring at the TV and yelling and frantically like rechecking Twitter. So I'm excited to be doing all of those same things, but with people.
That's with friends. Scott, I have in my hot little hand right here our schedule broken down into 5-minute increments. I'm going to hand you a copy.
That's impressive.
It's color coded.
That's weighty.
It's broken out by
like
area
it.
of the stage, including
like
the screen behind us. The Tower Theater is going all out. We're going to show some really exciting stuff up there. If you can come at all, I highly encourage you, even for an hour. This will be worth your time. Come to the Tower Theater at 6:00. You don't have to have tickets; just show up. It'll be great. Bring your friends.
I think it's cute that you have election coverage wrap up at 9:45, as though we're going to have a winner by 9:45.
It's a 15. Well, our event ends at 10.
Yeah, but I don't know if the election's going to be over at 10.
I think we'll have a good idea about most votes, right? But like there may be something like the governor we may not know until 4 a.m.
But you know what? Depending on how well our forecast holds up, we may know.
We may know 7:30.
We may know. We may be
be
sitting back with our feet up on the desk, saying, "Y'all can keep counting the votes. We tell you what's going to happen."
Smoking that bubblegum cigar or something.
That's right. That does not sound good.
It does.
A bubblegum cigar. That sounds disgusting.
Do they still give those to new fathers?
I hope not.
Is that still a thing?
I hope.
What are you supposed to chew it?
I have no idea. I didn't know those were the thing.
Do you remember when you were a kid that like candy cigarettes you could blow
I smoked real cigarettes when I was a kid.
when you're 6 years old?
I did not really smoke cigarettes as a child.
Listen, Mrs. Trotter, I've got a question about this edition.
No,
but I remember buying candy cigarettes when I was like probably 10 or 12, and you could blow on them and like a puff of sugar would come out.
Yeah, I remember.
Isn't that horrifying?
Yeah. I think those are illegal.
Our kids will never experience that, Scott.
They'll also never know who Joe Camel is.
Well, Lord willing. Big League Chew is still around though.
Oh yeah,
I come to buy that.
Yeah,
the grape was delicious.
The grape was tasty.
Is bubble tape still a thing?
Oh, I hope so.
6 feet of bubble gum
The
for
kids
you,
the kids
not
that
them.
didn't. I mean, to not know bubble tape. I mean, now it is objectively terrible bubble gum.
My sister would eat the entire 6 feet at once.
Sure.
That also sounds terrible, but she would.
I didn't say anything.
It's the same joke as like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right?
I don't know.
You heard that joke?
No.
I don't want to joke about eating pachyderms, but that's the joke. All right.
Nice.
Good golly, we are at the end of the episode.
I
will say,
tired.
if you happen to be around on Monday the 5th at 10 a.m., we're going to do a little ballots discussion thing at Citizens Bank in Edmond at Vault 405, which is their co-working space. It's free and open to the public. We'd love to have you come there.
We are also going to be at the Patriarch in Edmond at 6:30 on Monday evening.
Let me add that to my calendar.
Doing a similar sort of learn about your ballot kind of thing. Although, if you're listening to our show, you're probably all set in terms of what's on the ballot, but tell your friends who don't listen to the show that they need to come to the Patriarch on Monday night and have a beer and learn about what's on the ballot.
Well, and what time? 6:30?
Yes, sir.
All right. I mean, I think there's a lot of folks, whether we like to admit it or not, that are procrastinators, right?
Yeah.
I tend to be one of those. I was diligently working. Well, we're recording this podcast here just a few days beforehand, as an example. All right. Scott, anything else we've missed?
Nah, dude.
Nah, man. Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Don't forget to vote, first of all. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, tell your friends, tell your mom, your weird uncle. That's all cool. Let them know about us. And be sure to rate it on iTunes or Spotify or whatever it is you listen to us on. Be sure to connect with us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Let's Fix This Okay. On Election Day, we're going to be sharing a lot of content on our Instagram story, so be sure to check that out. Scott and I may take one or two folks to the polls for the first time, and we will document and share that for posterity there in our Instagram story. I'll share it on our Facebook story as well. But and Facebook, it's facebook.com/Let's Fix This Okay. Scott is at SC Melson. I'm at Andy OKC. And you can email us at podcast@letsfixthisok. Let's Pod This is a production of Mostly Harmless Media. Well, it's directed, produced, edited, all stuff by Scott and I. But we are a part of the Mostly Harmless Media Network. Our theme music that you hear right now, yeah, right there, that's from the Sugar Free All-Stars. Fantastic local band. We are a nonpartisan, non-profit organization and we strive to educate and equip all Oklahomans to engage with your government. We encourage you to get out and get involved in any way you can. Remember, decisions are made by those who show up, and next Tuesday is when you got to show up. Have a great week, folks. We'll see you on Tuesday on Election Day at the Tower Theater, 6 p.m. Have a great week.